Welcome to the Pipeline of People podcast, powered by Versorix, the show where boutique firm leaders trade less admin for more advisory. Each week we unpack the systems, stories, and strategies that help you keep your pipeline full and your people performing at their best. I'm your host, Jaden Parisi. Let's dive in. Today's guest is Chris Aird, owner of With Purpose, a consulting firm that reshapes, reorders, and revives businesses nationwide with tailored action plans designed to unlock growth, solve tough problems, and build stronger leaders. Chris, welcome. Could you kick us off with a quick look at your background and the mission behind With Purpose?
Well, great. And thank you for hosting me. It's a privilege to be a part of your amazing podcast. This is really cool, and I'm excited to be here. Just a little bit of background about me. I've been doing this for a little more than 30 years. And by this, I mean developing people and growing businesses. A lot of it has been inside the business. And as I was wrapping up my master's degree, it's kind of an MBA with an emphasis in organizational leadership. It was a professor that actually reached out to me and said, listen, Chris, I don't normally do this, nor will I ever do this again, but you're in the wrong line of work. And I was like, okay, what should I be doing? And he suggested business consulting. And as we know, it's different than coaching. And so I took that. I'm not a big risk taker, Jaden. But it didn't take me but less than 48 hours to really think about it, do a little praying on it, and come up with a name entitled With Purpose. And that was a little more than 10 years ago. So I've been on my own for more than 10 years. And this is not a gig for me. This is a calling. This is my purpose in life. And that's to really, again, develop people and grow businesses.
That's amazing. You emphasize one size fits all strategies don't really work for businesses. What sparked your passion for building kind of really personalized action plans?
What sparked my interest in that? Listen, I've come up with this phrase where people know their industry and they don't know their business. I just want that for your listeners to sink in for a moment. They know their industry, but they don't know their business. They don't know the three pillars of business that we've come up with, and that's people, processes, and profitability. And by profit, I mean it's more than money in the bank. It's your time given back to you. It's all of that. So when you think about those three pillars, when you think about the individual owner, each person is different, right? How we operate, sync up, how we think, how we cultivate and create. And so that's something that it has never crossed our mind to do the same thing for this individual as we would do for others. And so we come in with those active listening skills to hear what they've got and provide those solutions in a partnership with them.
It's a very interesting take, coming from a consulting background. It's always people, processes, technology, right? But no, I like that. Profitability, that's good.
Well, let me just say this real quick, Jaden. I'm working with a company that is on the global stage. And right now, their department that I'm working with is the technology, is the IT department. And their biggest challenge is not technology. It's people. It's the leadership. It's how do we get our time back? And as businesses left and right are cutting staff and money and resources, how do we do the most with the least amount of resources while keeping work-home life balance, while keeping our sanity intact?
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a bit. The things I want to cover today are, why so many firms struggle to translate vision into traction, the hidden cost of unclear strategy or undertrained leadership, what it takes to grow with intention without burning out your team, and finally, the role of outside perspective and tailored action plans in scaling sustainably. Sound good?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So for those who may not have heard of With Purpose, how do you describe what you do and who you work with?
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question, all right? So here's I would describe it as this. First of all, I say we have a heart for people and a mind for business. And we don't offer that cookie cutter approach. And more importantly, we partner, non-equitable partners, but we partner with people to develop and grow their people as well as their business. So that would probably kind of be that elevator pitch, if you will. And then in how we do that, it is that level of partnership. It's not coming in and saying, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to do it. This is your business. what are you looking for long end goals, right? And then let's reverse engineer it so that we put those benchmarks, KPIs in as frequently as needed, because we've got to change mindsets. We've got to hold accountability in place, which is kind of the glue that holds it all in, right? So as we go in, we keep in mind that this is not the way we would run the business. We are there to be that advisor, be that mentor, be that individual coming in with a subject matter expertise and not opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much better to kind of act as more of an advisor than someone who just goes in and follows orders and does their service and leaves, right? It helps with retention and that relationship, and people are going to value you much more when you are actually, challenging some of their assumptions and providing that kind of expert guidance, right? So
Right.
what you go?
I was just going to say, ultimately, you're in your business, you're leaving a legacy,
Yeah.
right? And we're watching, and give it in a year, we're watching all of these big box stores or restaurants collapse. They're folding in. They're filing Chapter 11, Chapter 13 bankruptcies, right? Or not 13, but Chapter 11 bankruptcies. And so part of that is, are they being intentional? So you go back to the name of the business, with purpose. It's about being intentional. And so you've got to be intentional with your people, your processes, and the profitability. Yes, money in the bank, but your time. How are you allocating those resources? When we do that, you now start to change your mindset, you change your habits, and you're now creating something that you're leaving beyond our own lifespan, and someone else is going to pick that up. Sure, they're going to tweak it for the time of day that's then. But ultimately, when we have that level of responsibility, a community enjoys the service, the product that we offer. And so why not think about leaving a legacy for the people behind us?
Yeah, exactly. I like that. And so what type of challenges tend to bring people through your door then? How do people approach you?
It's all types of challenges, all different types of people. And if you're asking about industries, it's been all over the place, as long as they're ethical, right?
Yep.
And so we've worked with multi-billion dollar companies like ExxonMobil, Northrop Grumman Corporation. We've worked with startups and everything in between. And I'll tell you this, and I was once asked a long time ago, like, what's your niche, right?
Yep.
And I'm known as, like, if you've ever watched the show Friends, they all have their niche, right? Like, those people couldn't go do something outside of what they were famous for in Friends. And if anything taught us in COVID, especially as business owners, if I had a particular niche, I would have been out of business. So I have diversification. So I've worked with nuclear consulting companies. I've worked with trades. I've worked with schools, different types of schools like Montessori's, charters, nonprofits, for-profits, boards, owners. You name it, I have done it. But because here's the thing, and I'm going to go back to, you said what brings people into our doors. It's because people know what they need, and they may not know how to get it, and or they need that affirmation to go ahead and make those decisions. And once they have that, smooth sailing for them. So that's ultimately, they have a challenge in any of those three pillars that I've already mentioned: people, processes, or profit. So you name it. I've, like, recently, last summer, I had an owner of a business 50 plus years, bleeding money and using his own personal resources, didn't have a budget. So the very first thing I did was I created a budget for him. And within 2 months, we found out in the first couple of weeks that they were bleeding about $20,000 in the hole, right? And 2 months later, 8 weeks later, we had flipped it to where they were making $20,000. And then, so that's where we get the budget, we get the profit, right? We understand the numbers, and then we can start creating resources, tools, new systems or processes that helps alleviate some of that pressure of bleeding money, if you will. So lots of ways that people come into a consulting business, and ours are no different.
Yeah. And I had a guest recently on the podcast actually that his whole business was he goes in to these other people's businesses that are making, anywhere from 1 to 30 million a year, and he kind of sets them up with this model that he calls the FOSM, finance, operations, sales, and marketing, where he just goes in and kind of starts measuring and tracking everything, because people don't do that and they don't understand that you need to do that. Like, how could you be losing 20 grand and not know, right? So it's interesting to see that kind of parallel. But where do you see most firms kind of underestimating the gap between their current capacity and their growth goals?
Um, Here's the gap. They know what they can do. They don't know how to get there, right? So it's untapped potential. They know it's it, it's more like they have a dream, right? And they don't know how to unfold that dream to get them to the end result. That's probably how I would answer that question.
Okay, for sure. Do you have like, could you walk us through a kind of example or a client story where that came into play, or?
Well, yeah. So one of my very first largest clients, nuclear consulting company, they had been in business for more than 20 years. And the daughter of the owner brought me in because she had heard about me, and just said, "Hey, I want you to have a conversation with my dad." We had a conversation. At the very end of the conversation, he says, "Okay, so what's it going to cost me?" And I said, "Well, what do you think the value, like, what's your investment? What's the value that you're willing to put in outside of money? Like, are you willing to put the time, the energy, kind of go through the painstaking process of reshaping your mindset over the past 20 years to what you need to do for the next 20 years?" Now, remind you, this gentleman's older. He's probably in his late 50s at this point. Um, Verge of bankruptcy is this company. So he shared with me, and then I said, okay. So I left with a deal in hand. I started with him immediately the very next day. And I started, so he already had a challenge, right? He knew there was more to his company. He didn't know how to get it. So I started working with him and his mindset, just him, for the next 3 months. And we got him to where he and I would have a code word when he was making presentations to different nuclear companies around the world. Um, and then months 4 through 7 ish, I was working with his team because they now had a new owner, if you will. Like, he was thinking different, right? There was excitement in the air. And while I was working with them, I was getting them to buy in into this new vision that was happening for this company, putting their systems in place, their processes. I promise you, as I'm looking in the camera right now, in less than a year of working with them, they had picked up a $7.5 million contract. And it wasn't in States, it was over in the Middle East. And so that's what I'm talking about, untapped potential. People, we know it, we feel it, we know it in our minds, we know it in our hearts. And we're just like, okay, I know the industry, but I don't know my business. So who can I get that will come bring themselves, their subject matter expertise, and kind of start tapping into that untapped potential? And that's when they give us a call.
Yeah, that's great. Your business is very focused on the people side, and I've also noticed that kind of some of the older generation, so to speak, is kind of set in their ways, right? And especially in today with AI being all the hype and board level conversations, do you leverage that at all in your services, or is that next for you?
I would need to find somebody that could help leverage that. I'm somewhat set in my ways. I don't usually use AI. In fact, I very rarely will I use it, um, because a lot of the stuff that I have in my head and my heart is still applicable. Now, I get it. AI complements that. So even in the department that I'm working with, that's IT, they're talking AI, but that's not what I'm there for. I'm there to help. So let's use that tool, let's leverage that tool, but how are you, through your leadership, through your systems, your processes, going to demonstrate how that's going to be leveraged? Because they still have to share the story up and down the chain of command, right?
Yeah.
So, you had made a comment earlier about one of the questions, like, translating, why do firms translate vision, right, into traction?
Yeah.
And I think this might be a good place to answer that, because when you talk about leveraging different tools, I think we have to be aware of that. And so I would say this, I would say, most companies do not lack vision. They lack alignment.
Okay.
And I think this might be a good place to answer that, because when you talk about leveraging different tools, I think we have to be aware of that. And so I would say this, I would say most companies do not lack vision. They lack alignment. They lack alignment. They don't lack vision, they lack alignment. We know what we want, we know we can see it, but how to get there, how to get the right people on the right bus sitting in the right seat, that's alignment. When do we implement these processes? When do we get to dive into profitability and or give time back or whatever those resources are? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does for sure. And I actually spoke with some people from this company called Humanistics AI that kind of solve exactly that alignment problem using an AI. I don't want to butcher the explanation of it, but it's definitely something you should look up after this. It was very interesting the way that they explained it and how it helps kind of turn all of the bottlenecks and controls that you'll see on a daily basis where you need a meeting with this person and approval from that person and X, Y, and Z, and how it kind of streamlines all of that, right? And the tools are just getting very advanced. So it's a very fascinating kind of company that I spoke with.
Yeah, and again, to leveraging those tools, and there's going to be more things beyond AI, right?
Yeah.
Um, so here's the thing: if the day-to-day operations, along with communication, the culture, and all that, don't reflect the vision, leveraging the tools, whatever those tools might be, all of that vision, all of those words, all of those ideas just stay stuck on a whiteboard.
Yep.
That's where they end up. So to your point, that company that you just referred to, that's probably a good tool to leverage.
Yeah, for sure. And, for all the kind of founders that are listening who might feel like they're stuck in reactive mode, where's kind of the first place to start reordering the business for sustainable growth, getting that alignment with the vision and with your people?
I think what has worked for us is we start with the end in mind.
Okay.
We start where they want to be, whether it's the next year, and they're just trying to get momentum, they're trying to get out of a rut, or it's the next 15, 20 years, and we're literally doing some strategic development, forecasting, and all that. So starting with the end in mind, you can now reverse engineer all of the different KPIs, goals, benchmarks. Year by year, you can group it into 5, 10, 15 years in that example. And you can even get and drill down as into the weeds as much as you possibly can with like maybe sales, and it's on a weekly basis, right? So that's where we start, is with the end in mind.
Yeah, that's great. And that kind of segues into my next kind of section. What's next for With Purpose? Any new offerings, directions on the horizon? Where do you want to be in 10 to 15 years?
Well, I'll start with that. So in the next 10, 15 years, we are a consulting firm that has employed dozens of fellow consultants. They're not employees, they're partners. We have a community to grow across this great globe of ours. And what we offer is second to none, to be honest with you. That's why people come back or they renew, time and time and time again. So ultimately, we're kind of not a household name, but we're a name when businesses are looking for something and they want to be proactive. It's easier to get things done when you're proactive than reactive, right?
Yep.
So that's where I see us. 15 years, yeah, I'm probably not as involved, but I would love to have some of those legacy clients that I'm personally involved with. Offerings, just like I'm kind of resurrecting a podcast that I once had. So I would love to host you, sir, and anyone else. And I would also say, as far as offerings, listen, we meet people where they're at, and we're not the most expensive game in town. And what we do is we provide value. So we don't charge by the hour. If we've got a project to knock out, that's on us to commit to the time through the accountability and all of that. So we've got different things for different people and different types of businesses, industries, if you will. So I would just encourage people to reach out.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd be happy to hop on your podcast.
Oh, great. Thanks, Jaden.
Okay, well, we got a few minutes left here, so I want to do this thing that we do with most of our guests. We It's a little rapid fire, quick 20, 30-second answers, whatever's on the top of your head. Sound
Okay.
good?
All right.
All right. What is the biggest myth about business growth?
That it's easy. It's an overnight success.
You are not the first person to say that.
It's a myth. Overnight success means that people weren't paying attention. All of a sudden, people popped up with this amazing business. It is a lot of hard work, and it's behind the scenes work. If you've ever heard this phrase, this is what I would equate it to. If you're a sports fan, playoffs are won in the off season, meaning the training, the teamwork, the development, the systems, the plays, that is all done in the off season so that you show up at game time to win the game. So that's what I would say. That's probably the biggest myth about business owning and the development of businesses.
Yep. I agree. What is a personal passion or hobby or just kind of lesson that you've learned that unexpectedly helped you grow as a business owner?
Even as a business owner, you need a team. And I'm not talking about the people underneath you. I need a mentor. I need someone that I can bounce ideas off of, that is somewhat has a business acumen. So my encouragement to you or to any of your listeners is, reach out to us. We have mastermind groups that we can put you in, but that is where I have unexpectedly found the growth is in that mastermind group where even if I'm conducting one, I have learned from other people. So I would say find yourself people that you can know, like, and trust. The second thing I would say is listen intently. There's always something to learn. There's always an opportunity to learn from.
Of course. And it looks like, I'm just on your website right now. It looks like you might be working with your wife and daughter.
So my wife, yes, Lisa, she's my executive assistant. And then I don't know if his picture's on there. I have another consultant by the name of Pete as well.
Yep, he's there. And Jenna,
that's my daughter. Yep. She's behind the scenes. She's doing some research. She's 20 something. So, she's putting, things together from that perspective, that particular age group, because right now in the workforce, we have anywhere from 4 to 5 generations working under the same roof.
Yeah.
So we want to be relevant.
And how's it been kind of working with them?
It's good. Not all families work well together. And I think there's a good self-actualization, self-awareness, especially between the three of us. And so we all know what we're responsible for, and we stay within those boundaries, those guidelines, if you will.
Yeah, that's great. Finally, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
That I've ever been given?
Yep.
Know your worth. Know your worth. Because even when other people don't see your worth, if you don't know your worth, that's when people typically give up. So my encouragement, my best piece of advice given to me, I will share again with your listeners, is know your worth. Whether people see it or recognize it, you should know it.
Okay, that's excellent. Chris, fantastic insights. Thank you for joining. Where can people connect with you or learn more about With Purpose?
So our website, withpurposellc.com, where you can find us on the With Purpose pages on Facebook, Instagram. I think we're getting onto TikTok. I'm not sure. That's not my realm. Certainly, you can find me as well as With Purpose on LinkedIn under Chris Aird, or With Purpose. I think it's business consulting firm. You guys have my email, phone number. Chris Aird at withpurposellc.com is my email. And I don't have our office number off the top of my head, but let me give you my personal cell. That is 623-523-1150.
Awesome. If today's conversation sparked ideas, share with a fellow leader who's ready to turn vision into action. Until next time, I'm Jaden Parisi. This is the Pipeline and People Podcast.